Impidimp seems like the kind of Pokemon that Jessie is going to have. The useless, clumsy imp trying to listen to the demands of a dominant woman? It's quite the trope. But anyway, I love Impidimp! I love Morgrem! And Grimmsnarl is alright too, I guess. That is, of course, if I'm judging them entirely on looks alone. I'm just salty that this awesome color palette turned into... this? But funnily enough, it seemed like most people on the internet sort of had the opposite opinion. A lot of folks really didn't like Impidimp when it was, sort of revealed. I mean, it's so gangly, and it has a ponytail that's just a single bat wing? Why does it only have one nostril? What is this mess? Is this really what we're getting for our first dark fairy-type Pokemon? Heck, what even is this whole line? Well, me a few seconds ago, I thought you'd never ask. These Pokemon have some amazing origins, and that is what we're going to talk about today on Gnoggin. So first things first, why the heck is it dark and fairy type? Well, the Japanese name gives us the biggest hint to its origin. Its name is Beroba, from bero, meaning tongue, and there's also bero, which is the sound of licking very quickly, repeatedly. And also, Beroba is their equivalent of Peekaboo! And notably, in pop culture, when someone plays a successful prank on someone, they will often do a face of sorts. And one common expression is the classic sticking out of the tongue. And just look at Impidimp. Is its tongue even able to fit in its mouth? But this makes perfect sense, as fairies are seen as tricksters and will deceive humans just for fun and amusement. But as for the dark side of this line, well, dark types also tend to be mean-spirited, evil even, and tricksters in their own right. Weavile is a great example here. They are based on a Japanese weasel yokai that looks for people to attack in a flash and cut them up a whole bunch, but then quickly patch up their wounds so the person wakes up and they're confused and in pain, but they're not dead. But Peekaboo? Peekaboo! How does Peekaboo fit into the name? A game that you play with babies where you reveal your face? Well, maybe it's partially inspired by a classical changeling, and not the new pop culture shapeshifter changeling, the old folklore of fairies stealing babies and replacing them with changelings as a fun trick. And as people slowly pick up on little things that are wrong here and there, the illusion slowly wears off and the changeling baby starts looking uglier and more inhuman as time passes. Talk about the face reveal, and quite the surprise. And the Pokedex mentions how these mon crave chaos and negative energy, stating, through its nose it sucks in the emanations produced by people and Pokemon when they feel annoyed. It thrives off of negative energy. It sneaks into people's homes, stealing things and feasting on the negative energy of the frustrated occupants. This is behavior that fits super well with the Fae, as they were fiendish, devilly pranksters and were blamed for almost anything negative happening. Fitting, because a bunch of Fae were speculated to have been gods before Christianity steamrolled in and did that no god before me thing. So the gods and creatures of pre-Christian belief all became demonic monsters, which is why these Fae Pokemon have mild demon-looking features, but nothing super blatantly demonic. Now here's where things start getting deep and super cool. Let's look at Morgrem. He no longer is just a changeling, he's a goblin. And goblin means ugly fairy. Fitting for our friend here. But along with this, he also has had his colors split. Red top, green bottom, and he can manipulate his hair like Bayonetta. I'll get into that later, but for now, let's look at the shape of his hair. It's the biggest hint to his origin. Morgrem's hair spike is in the shape of a polearm, or a halberd. Is there a difference? No, that's not what this video is about. Morgrem's hair is a polearm. Well, that's cool. I wonder if there's a kind of goblin famous for using these. It'd sure be great if said goblin were also famous for having red tops. Oh hey, red caps. Red caps carry around polearms and will die if the hats on their heads are not wet with blood. Because of this, they lure people into the woods, or at the very least, out of safety, and kill them to wet their hands with their blood. And the Pokedex entry for Morgrem shows us similar behavior. With sly cunning, it tries to lure lure people into the woods. Some believe it to have the power to make crops grow. So, Morgrem is luring 10-year-olds into the woods so it can use their blood as hair conditioner. So that's dark. As for the part about the crops, it's another possible reference to Fae and goblins. As I've said, Fae are the past gods. Gods who were prayed to like any other god, often for protection, i.e., please don't eat me, and sometimes prayed to for blessings, like good weather or fruitful crops. And there are other goblins we can look at too, like hobgoblins and brownies. These guys are famous for being little hidden beings that hide inside your house, and they are blamed for things disappearing, things going wrong, or for your place suddenly being clean. Hobgoblins in particular are famous for this, and are the inspiration for things like Dobby from Harry Potter. If you keep them happy, then they would do chores for you in your house while you were sleeping. But they were also naked all the time, or at the very least were wearing raggedy rags. But then if you ever offered them clothes, they get offended and they run off. Or worse, they turn into a brownie. And this could be another reason why Impidimp doesn't have any hair, because he's a little naked brownie. But as for brownies, they do act just like Impidimp. They steal things and prank the owners of a home, just like we saw in its Pokedex entries. But back to Morgrem. Let's break its name down. It consists of Morg and Grem. Grem could be from gremlin, Fae creatures that popped up during and after the Industrial Revolution. Yeah, I didn't realize that gremlins were such a recent thing in the grand scheme of things. They were beings who were blamed for things like failing machines and engines, which is why in pop culture today you sometimes see gremlins and goblins with, you know, steampunky wrenches and engines and stuff. It's neat. Grem is also Old English and Old German for to anger or enrage, and well, insert Impidimp Pokedex entries here again. Then Morg could be from morgue, a place where you send dead bodies. But I'm more inclined to believe that it's a reference to Morgan Le Fay. Who is Morgan Le Fay? Morgan Le Fay is a famous witch from the tales of the King Arthur mythos. She was famous for using fae, fairies, and fairy magic to mess with King Arthur and his gang. One of the most famous tricks she pulled on King Arthur was the famous story of the Green Knight. A large, bulking Green Knight walks into the dining hall of King Arthur while holding an axe, and he offers a game to the king. The knight bows down on his hands and knees, and King Arthur takes a swing at his neck. Then, exactly 1 year later, it will be the knight's turn to do the same to Arthur. Folklore, am I right? But check out Morgrem's Pokedex entry. When it gets down on all fours as if to beg for forgiveness, it is trying to lure opponents in so that it can stab them with its spear-like hair. That sounds sorta like the Green Knight, getting down on all fours as a trick. Also, Morgrem has a green bottom, and its hair being a polearm, which is a spear mixed with an axe, like the Green Knight's axe, it just fits perfectly, especially since this Green Knight is speculated to be a god turned fae. Fitting, since our little buddy here can make crops grow. And speaking of a big Green Knight, Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl has some weird traits, like 3 fingers, hair everywhere, ugly. But we can look at the inspirations all over to get an idea here. Impidimp is a changeling, and Morgrem is the child changeling hitting puberty and running into the woods to live with its fellow fae. So then, Grimmsnarl is the fully grown fae, and there is actually a creature that fits with this perfectly. The troll. Works out great too, since trolls are the most famous fae beasts to swap babies with changelings. And they are often described as hairy folk that live in the woods, and they too have ties to witches. Early pagan Norse settlers in places like Orkney and Shetland used the word troll to describe all mystical creatures, or mystical magic-y folk. So, troll could fit anything from witches, to your stereotypical trolls, to fae, and imps, and much, much more. Later on, though, it did start becoming more specific for the large hairy people that lived in the woods, which primarily inspired Grimmsnarl. But you can also see the witch inspiration in its facial features. The long nose and green skin, it's your stereotypical Hollywood Halloween witch look. But as for trolls, they were extremely powerful, and people used to blame landmarks on trolls throwing massive stones around. And similarly, Grimmsnarl is strong, as it uses the hair all over its body as muscles. The Pokedex says, with the hair wrapped around its body helping to enhance its muscles, this Pokemon can overwhelm even Machamp. Whew! That's strong! Machamp is famous for its strength. I mean, it can send things flying over the horizon. Grimmsnarl can overwhelm that? Well, I suppose that's fitting, considering the massive strength of trolls. And looking closer, even its fingers point to trolls in pop culture because of things like World of Warcraft. Trolls now stereotypically have 3 fingers, just like Grimmsnarl on the whole line. Also, some say trolls slowly turn to stone in the sunlight if they are uncovered, and Grimmsnarl covers itself up with its hair. But speaking of the hair, what's with the whole controlling the hair thing? Grimmsnarl and Morgrem can both control their hair. What's up with that? And does that have any connection to Bayonetta? Well, it turns out the answer is yes. It is a direct reference to olden occult beliefs. Witches contain their power in their hair, which is one of the many reasons witches were typically women, because they have longer hair. The hair holds the magic and the strength. Hair is used in potions and spells, which is why back in the Middle Ages, and even before then, it was a common practice to either burn or bury your hair after a haircut. That way, witches can't take it and become more powerful. So I guess on top of explaining Grimmsnarl here, I've also explained why Bayonetta's hair powers are the thing that they are. She's an Umbral witch. She controls hair, because hair is magic, and hair has all of her power in it. All of these witch references do seem a bit odd, though, considering Grimmsnarl is a male-only Pokemon, but then again, witch's hair has its strength typically in magic, not in physical power. So I guess by making the magical witch hair more masculine, it becomes muscles. It's a theory. But we're still not quite done, as there's still one more form to this line, Gigantamaxed Grimmsnarl. Yeah, even the G-Max form has ties to Fae, specifically a particular goblin. G-Maxed Grimmsnarl stands more upright and is significantly taller, obviously. But it also gains a unique trait. It gains its unique G-move called G-Snooze, which happens to perfectly reference Finn McCool of Old Irish myth. Finn McCool had to fight off a fiery goblin named Ian McMigna, who was also a giant Fey Prince. The perfect thing to base a G-Maxed Grimmsnarl on already. But on top of this goblin had a magical harp that it would use to cause all of those listening to it to fall asleep. Just like G-Maxed Grimmsnarl's unique G-move. And while asleep, it would just, burn their entire town to the ground every single year. But why? Well, revenge. And because it's funny. Typical Fey goblin stuff. So ultimately, I was very surprised to learn how deep these Pokemon really were. Much more than just imps and goblins. And that's just awesome. Do you have anything to add? What other Pokemon are just as deep as this that I haven't covered yet? Let me know down below, and until next time, you never stop using your noggin.